YSK. What cognitive dissonance actually means. YSK. I frequently see this term being misused or misunderstood as more of a fancy way to call someone out for being hypocritical. It is a useful concept to be aware of to challenge your own beliefs and reconcile your own dissonance, and should not be used as a replacement for hypocrisy or just being wrong. Cognitive dissonance is something you feel when you hold or contrast two contradictory positions or beliefs. For example, if you believe in the Christian concept of hell or sin, yet you do not otherwise abide by the faith, you may experience cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is not the attempt to rectify two contradictory positions, it is the feeling one gets when they notice it. The acts or processes used to solve cognitive dissonance are not themselves cognitive dissonance and may have other labels. For example, one might resolve a CD by embracing certain fallacies or biases. One may reconcile a feeling of cognitive dissonance in several ways, including adapting their beliefs or making behavior modifications. For example, the person who believes in hell and sin could strictly abide by their religious doctrine, change their belief system, and/or stop believing in hell and sin, or minimize or justify their actions. TLDR, you should know experiencing CD is not a character flaw. It doesn't mean you, or someone else is stupid. It isn't someone being hypocritical, rather it is how they feel upon noticing it. How one resolves them is what matters, and it takes practice and often humility. Can you give more examples, cause I'm still not getting it. Explain like I'm 5 please. And doublethink is when you hold two contradictory beliefs without any dissonance whatsoever. It's an analogy with music. If two logical propositions or beliefs and behavior are compatible, then they harmonize. If they clash or don't sit well together, there is dissonance, a lack of harmony. This is very poorly explained. I think you're actually a little confused. Someone who is experiencing cognitive dissonance could be labeled a hypocrite, and it would be accurate by definition. Cognitive dissonance is just the way you feel when your thoughts and behaviors do not match up, which implies you are being hypocritical about something. I've never heard someone say cognitive dissonance is the act of rectifying behaviors that do not conform to thoughts. People criticizing the post to death. But even if you think it's terribly explained, at least OP brought this topic up, and thanks to that a lot of people are learning about it, even if it's thanks to the comments. It isn't the feeling of noticing contradictory stances itself, it's the feeling of tension created by holding those contradictions. Some people accept them without the dissonance. Also, when you believe the sky is blue and colorless at the same time, you are actually smarter than the people correcting you, since color is only the reflections of light. It is still the same light, just in another state. Better examples are in feeling, where you can be angry and happy at the same time in weird situations, or anxious and excited. Many people think they're smart when they point out contradictions, yet they're not always smarter. Lol, I saw that thread yesterday asking people about the worst cognitive dissonance they've ever seen, and it was all just people describing hypocrisy. I did a bachelor's in psych and master's in CMHC straight through 4 years total, skipped generals. I learned 3-4 different definitions for cognitive dissonance, all from reputable sources. It's overused for multiple things. I gave up wanting to be right about it. Stop saying you have OCD, smiley face. A common example for cognitive dissonance is the discomfort a smoker gets by understanding the dangers associated with it, i.e. increased cancer risk, etc. etc. Although they are often aware of the dangers, these individuals often justify their smoking maybe by saying that it calms their nerves in order to fight back against the mental discomfort of CD. Dissonance reduction is the term for actions taken, whether adaptive or maladaptive, to reduce cognitive dissonance. When you claim to love animals yet eat meat. Cognitive dissonance gets thrown around a lot in political discussions. It's usually in 2 different instances. The first is when someone will notice that a person is seemingly oblivious to their own hypocrisy and then comment about that person. The cognitive dissonance is amazing. However, the correct phrase in this instance would be the lack of cognitive dissonance is amazing. Because they are holding contradictory positions but are unaware of it. The second instance is when someone comments on how a person resolves their cognitive dissonance, which is essentially by blowing off or minimizing contradictory beliefs. Serious question: is it a different kind of cognitive dissonance when I play the piano and accidentally start playing off key and my brain nearly melts because what I hear with my ears and what I hear in my head are different? I've tried to Google this but can't seem to get the words right to find the answer to what that is. Someone who believes that police only arrest the guilty who gets arrested for something they didn't do. I'll tell you what cognitive dissonance is. It is looking at the results of a DNA test that tells you the dad on your birth certificate is not your biological father. It took me a year for my brain to catch up with the truth. I think the example isn't the most clear. There is a lot of cognitive dissonance in Christianity. Believing that the Christian God values free will but punishes people for exercising that free will. Or that he loves his children but willingly condemns them to torment for disobedience. Ex-Christian. Also, CD can exist when color-other stimuli mismatches occur. In the US, Coca-Cola is associated with red and Pepsi-Cola with blue. My boss remembers a presentation where the bar graphs shown reversed the colors. Every blue bar was for Coke and every red bar Pepsi. Really distracting, and she remembers it 40 years later. For me, the CD example that sticks in my memory was a box of crackers with a roasted caramelized onion flavor that highlighted the flavor variety in green text. No. Raw or green onion is green. Roasted onion is brown or maybe dark purple like an eggplant. Made my brain hurt. I'm a clinical psychologist, and so much of therapy is spent on helping the person recognize this concept in their life. Thank you. I feel sane again. There was an Ask Reddit question about this yesterday and all of it was hypocrisy. Another example is someone feels animal cruelty is bad but still eats animals. I experienced it last week at my job. Long Island iced tea is, in fact, not with iced tea but with Coca-Cola. The impression of my brain being not correctly wired was intense for a few minutes. TLDR. Amen. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I, too, just listened to the Hidden Brain podcast on this. So how do you describe someone who is demonstrating that they are trying to hold two conflicting ideas at once? Reconciling my cognitive dissonance is what led me to choose veganism years ago. Green Heart. Thank you. As a former psychology student, this drives me insane. People love just saying things they hear on the internet after zero research. Woman facepalming. You love all animals, but you eat them. I guess a good example is someone who'd go mad if they saw someone kicking a dog in the street, but will happily pay a butcher to behead a pig and give them its leg. I posted this once some years back. Got downvoted, screamed at, and sneered at. I love animals. Animals are delicious. Cognitive dissonance. A classic example is caring about animals and wanting to stop others from hurting them, and enjoying eating meat knowing they have to die for it. Two conflicting beliefs held simultaneously is prime-time cognitive dissonance. I just saw an example of this. A Redditor on another thread used gay as an insult against another straight person yet had pro-LGBT posts on his page. If you actually supported LGBT people, you wouldn't be using homosexuality as an insult. You don't necessarily have to realize you have two conflicting beliefs, it's also being ignorant to the conflict in beliefs. R21 pilots. That's very well explained, thank you. Just a small editorial note, not criticism, is that you could have stated use of abbreviation after the first use of the term and continued to use that abbreviation for every instance thereafter. So, the first instance would be cognitive dissonance CD and then every other instance would just be CD. Thank you for this. So is it the feeling you get when you realize you're being a hypocrite? Or is being a hypocrite something else?